Major James Lennox McFarlane here. Dear Roth and Conasatatu, greetings and how are you? I'll tell you a bit about myself, but first, consider this. Had it not been for that road I designed, much of what you see here might never have happened. At least, not when it did. When I arrived in Cobble Hill in 1903, there had already been a sawmill. It was dismantled in 1878 after the marketable timber had all been used, and the area was already known as Mill Bay. The Delume family, after whom the Delume Road is named, were among the most successful of the early Mill Bay settlers. The success they had with their Good Hope farm certainly inspired others to see the area as an excellent location in which to start a farm. In 1887, St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church was opened by Bishop Lehman, and in 1898, Mill Bay Methodist Church was dedicated by the Reverend Winslow. There was a school, but community growth was slow. Why? Well, because there was no way to get to Mill Bay. A trip to Victoria meant 9 hours by steamer from Nanaimo, a sloop from Cowichan Bay that only ran weekly, or by rowboat from the Saanich Peninsula. There was an almost impassable route called the Gold Stream Trail, 5 feet wide and 50 miles long, from Victoria to Goldstream through Souk and then over hills and rivers, around Shawnigan Lake to Cobble Hill and Cowichan Bay. I was born April 07, 1844 in Huntsdown House, Dublin, the eldest son of Henry James McFarlane of Huntsdown House, Malahat, County Dublin, and Fala Erin, Berra, County Tyrone. I tell you now, I've seen some foolishness in my time. You learn more than anyone needs to know about foolishness if you spend your early days as I did, serving in the 3rd Prince of Wales Dragoons in India. And me, an educated man with degrees from Trinity College in Dublin. I met a few obstacles along my way, but as they say back in Ireland, if you want praise, die. If you want blame, marry. Three marriages had provided me with a great deal of practical wisdom in matters relating to negotiation, but more on that later in the story. I'm here to relate how that highway, now known as the Malahat, came to be where there had just been trees, rock, and some inhospitable geography. Why did I emigrate to Canada in 1898 and Vancouver Island in 1903? Because I'd heard that there were more than a few ex-British Army types like myself who had settled here, some to recreate themselves perhaps, others to begin a new life in a climate not unlike the softer parts of an English summer. The place was not making anybody wealthy, but it was a comfortable place from which to look back on the best days of service to king and country in the company of other retired officers from the old days who'd put the worst behind them. What I found as the existing route from Victoria to my newly purchased farm in Cobble Hill was nothing better than a goat track. Sure, there was a single set of wagon tracks, but they were rutted deep, and the slow going was made worse by switchbacks, which negotiated the hills. The trip took 3 days, and the only alternative at the time was to travel by boat or rail. I later heard that government surveyors said a road would never be built, and that only a few farmers might drive their stock across it occasionally. Well, I was planning on being a farmer, and those surveyor fellows had never served the Crown in India or seen the Khyber Pass. I was going to need a road to get my produce to Victoria while we were still alive. Clearly, the path from Victoria to Cobble Hill had been designed by some fat-bottom bureaucrat who'd never left the comfort of his hearth and home. Well, as they say back home, time to grab my coat and put it on. On my first trip to the farm, purchased sight unseen, I travelled with my friend Arthur Flint. There. We planned to stop overnight at Flint's Shawnigan Lake home, but the trip was a physical trial for us both. What kind of road this is. All right, round here I suppose. What are our chances of getting there tonight?
Take a look at the top of that hill. We'll be lucky if we get to the top of it before dark. And then, there's a downhill slope to navigate. We'll be camping here tonight.
Oh. When we got to the rising ground beyond Goldstream, we got off the wagon and walked until we got to the top, and then looked down a steep hill. I thought now we could have a welcome rest.
No rest for the wicked, McFarlane. That includes you and all Irishmen.
Since the trail, and that's speaking kindly of it, was much too steep, and us having no brake, we tied the back wheels together and got down the hill the same way as they say that lawyers get to heaven, by degrees. Oh, good idea, Arthur. I'll have one of those. While we were enjoying our lunch, and thankful we were to be safe on level ground again, cheers, I remember turning to Flint. Never again will you see me driving on this so-called road.
If you want to drive to Victoria, this is the only one.
What? Well, then I will get a better road built. And that is what started it all. It was really unsuitable for serious freight or speedy travel. Common sense told me that a new road to Victoria would reduce the time by a whole day. So, having taken up land in Mill Bay, I inquired at the Department of Works why it was there was no road going north from the capital city.
Look, we have been sending out surveyors and engineers for over 40 years now, and they've inevitably returned and reported back to me that it was impossible to find a line upon which any kind of decent road could be built between here and Cobble Hill. There's a rail line. That alone took 3.5 years, and then didn't extend to Victoria until 1888. Why do you need a road?
Politicians. I need a drink. As they say, you'll never plough a field by thinking about it. But I soon found out that the distance between a good idea and bureaucratic approval can be about as tedious as a trip I'd once made from Kashmir to Calcutta on horseback.
Will no one rid me of this irritating, jumped-up Irishman and his crazy idea?
But I was sure that there was a route and that it could be found. I asked for a map and told them I would find a line and mark it on the map. Everyone seemed to think it was nonsensical for me to say that I could do something when the government officials said it was impossible. Laziness, as my father told me, is a heavy burden. So after making a few of the right contacts, I got a job as the game warden for the area along the ENN railway belt, which had been built from Nanaimo to Esquimalt, as far as 25 miles, 40 kilometres from Victoria, and then extended into the capital city only in 1888. Patrolling the district in a handcart provided by the railway company served to give me more detailed knowledge of the country. I admit I was getting fired up about my idea of a road and decided to take the first field exploration myself. My cavalry and artillery experience had taught me something about surveying, and my reconnaissance and scouting in India provided me with a valuable start. My old mother told me, if God sends you down a stony path, may he give you strong shoes. And so it was that with some of my best ex-army boots and starting off at Mill Bay, I took my time and good care to map a trail, all the while cutting through bush and carefully recording the elevation and route by marking it with a series of pegs at regular intervals, all the time using all I had in the way of tools, a compass, a measuring tape, and an aneroid barometer. I knew about the old proverb that unwillingness easily finds an excuse, and I believed a path could eventually be found which would become a road. I even made a few more trips to those useless Egypts in Victoria. I made the rounds at the government offices anyway, trying to generate interest in my idea. Government. Those jokers had never spent any time serving in the British cavalry or artillery. I was not going to waste my time talking to them. Well, it's a long story, and life is too short for a long story. But after 3 years, 3 summers of beating my way through the bush along the inlet, my friends and neighbours were beginning to think it was the obsession of a madman. I returned to Mill Bay the long way round on the wagon road, thinking to myself all the way that this called for more initiative from the Cobble Hill end. And as the secretary of the Cobble Hill Farmers Institute, I called a special meeting of the Institute at the hall. Now, a bit of background here. Somehow the rumour had been put around that I was a man of poor judgment and quick temper, prone to heedless action when others might have hesitated. It could be, and I'm not saying it was this, mind you, that it was all about an incident 3 months before. Piffle. I admit that I shot my neighbour Garnett's vicious bull in self-defence when it trespassed on my farm and my wheat crop, threatened the life of one of my children and attacked me, in consequence of which I shot it. Frank and Dan Chapman stood by me and testified that the bull was a gross nuisance. And finally, Judge Harrison vindicated me, saying I was justified in shooting Garnett's bull. The fact that Judge Harrison and I enjoyed a glass together every now and then, that could be the kind of thing that resulted in only 3 other members turning up at the Farmers Institute meeting, but they passed a resolution strongly endorsing the idea of a new road. We'll do fine. While this was hardly a major demonstration of support from the members, it was a start. The newspapers quickly caught on to the spirit of our movement and duly reported, "Wagon Road to Victoria, very influential meeting held in Cobble Hill Hall, a resolution calling for the government to have a wagon road built, connecting the roads in Goldstream with those in Millbay." With a copy of the resolution, I headed back down to Victoria by train to meet with members of the Victoria Board of Trade. My reputation for hot-headed action pursued me, though, and at the Cobble Hill rail station I was met by local residents who jeered me for my foolishness at the Farmers Institute meeting. My growing passion for the project and my honestly inherited Irish gift for words carried the Board of Trade, and after endorsing my ideas, they too carried the plan. With some sweet reason and a touch of blarney, I managed to get the support of both the Automobile Association and the Tourist Association. Those ninnies in government, the politicians, were still unimpressed.
But I'm informed that the local population doesn't want this road, and the tourists and the other undesirables it will bring to their peaceful existence. I'll talk to you again when you can produce a petition with 100 legitimate signatures requesting that we reconsider a road from Victoria to Millbay and beyond.
Encouraged, I decided to start a grassroots campaign and began a petition, spending months collecting the signature of all the residents from Oak Bay to Millbay. Slow is every foot of an unknown path, but eventually the petition sheet was 9.5 feet long. Finally, this presentation to the minister obtained results. The bureaucrats stalled again, this being the thing they did best from behind the safety of their desks. They did not even believe that well-known surveyor and road builder Frank Verrier, who agreed my route was the only one possibility. Yet another survey was commissioned, this time by civil engineer Dennis Harris. To their chagrin, the bureaucrats learned that the original survey, undertaken years before by me, really was the only logical route. No matter how many times you boil the cabbage, it still smells the same. I survived an Irish education, service in India, emigrating to Canada, dragging my belongings over that godforsaken hill to get here, beating my way through the bush to map a path out for a road. And if some broad-beamed bureaucrat thinks I'm going to be put off now, he's crazier than a billy coat in a pepper patch. The big break came at election time. The member of the Legislative Assembly of Millbay was given a mandate by the electorate to further explore the idea of a new road. A bill was passed in the legislature approving the project, a budget of $25,000, and tenders were finally called. The lowest bidder, John Haggerty, defaulted on the project work soon afterwards. Not surprising once he saw the route that I had laid out. But the work was eventually completed by the provincial government using day labour recruited from among the residents of the region. The following year, M.J. Carlin won the contract for the middle 10 miles left to construct. The road opened in 1911 and was immediately acclaimed as a scenic wonder. I was not invited to the official opening by those blackguard politicians. They'd seen enough of me, they thought. The work crew was on my side, though. You can get more cooperation by an ounce or two of Burke's finest Irish whiskey than a pound of vinegar, and I'd presented each of them with a whole bottle. And so it was that I was able to ride through the ribbon, leaving that pompous Premier McBride spluttering in the dust. There were stretches that seemed to go on forever, with no place to turn around. There were no railings and few places to pass oncoming traffic. Today, if you stand on the big rock lookout, remember that you are standing on the original road, with no barrier to protect automobiles and horse-drawn vehicles as they passed one another. If you met a car, one of them had to back up to a turnoff to get by. On January the 1st, 1922, the province switched to right-hand side driving. Oh, you should have seen the confusion that caused. Like Murphy's chickens when the fox got in. Punctures were common, so you carried a jack, tyre irons to take off the tyres, a pump and a repair kit. Most drivers carried 5-gallon tins of gas, lubrication oil and extra spark plugs. Dusters, goggles, hats and scarves had to be worn because dust covered everyone and everything. Overheating of brakes and radiators was common, and the car's water tank had to be filled every half an hour. In 1924, the Rotary Club of Victoria built a concrete water trough which is still there on what is now the Mill Bay Road, and it's now maintained by the South Cowichan Rotary Club and the Victoria Rotary Club. The original road created a new sensation, the auto trip. The stunning view from the Malahat Drive drew people from around the world. Restaurants and places to stay overnight sprang up along the route called auto camps. It did not take long, once the new road had been opened, for city dwellers to realize that just a few hours away, Mill Bay provided the perfect weekend getaway. Local entrepreneurs moved quickly to take advantage of the newly created tourist market along the new road right along the shores of Mill Bay. But nary a pub. Those wowzers. As you can see, it's a beautiful place over there. My road gave me access to this marvelous view, and I could bring beautiful women up here for picnics too. Mind your step. Be careful there. Okay. And when we get over here, we'll have a picnic and we'll see if there's any bears. real estate sales became a matter of interest to city dwellers. Even though in 1904 there had been only 32 cars registered in the entire province, by the 1920s that and many more would eventually pass over my road every day. As tourist travel between Victoria and Mill Bay became a reality, postcards extolling the beauty of Mill Bay as a waterfront vacation paradise was sent to friends and relatives across Canada and beyond. The road brought expansion to Bamberton, a cement factory and company town established in 1912, accessible only by water. The Malahat allowed the company to begin trucking their rock and cement, and Bamberton became the biggest cement producing plant in Western Canada. The Mill Bay Road became an artery through which life flowed into Mill Bay. The once sleepy little community now needed more schools, shops, and new places for the growing community. The Sydney Board of Trade in 1921 discussed the possibility of a Brentwood to Mill Bay ferry route. In 1924, 2 wharfs were built, one at either end of the route, and 2 retired naval officers converted an older 90-foot coastal tramp steamer, the Cascade, to allow vehicles to drive on bow and stern. The first crossing occurred in October 1924, but that December, when ice from the frozen bay opened the seams in the wooden hull, she sank at Brentwood Wharf. The old boat was recovered and repaired and plied the route for the next 32 years, until the motor vessel Mill Bay replaced it in 1956 and subsequently ran continuously for the next 55 years. The original motor vessel Mill Bay became a proud addition to the BC Ferries fleet in 1969, having proved her worth to the community she served and making this the oldest continuous ferry service on the BC coast. After the new road had become part of the regular up-island travel from Victoria, a proposal was brought forward in 1925 that a solarium for the prolonged treatment of delicate and crippled children be built on an oceanfront site in Mill Bay. A contribution from the royal family resulted in the facility being named after Queen Alexandra. The Queen Alexandra Solarium for Crippled Children welcomed its first patient on May the 1st, 1927, on the site of what is now Brentwood College School, originally located in Brentwood Bay near Saanich on Vancouver Island, from where its name was derived. In the late 1950s, inevitably, there was a need for Mill Bay's first fire station. In the late 1950s, they moved my road from along the water's edge on what is now Mill Bay Road up onto a higher elevation where it is today. This is St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church. It's still in operation, and I'm sure their prayers helped me in my survey. This used to be the red and white grocery store. It's now Rusticana's Coffee. wonder if they can do me an Irish coffee. What is now the Island Savings Credit Union back parking lot used to be Horton's garage. Here at the Mill Bay Centre, I'm now standing on first base of what used to be a baseball field. The Rosebank Cottages were once the Mill Bay Auto Camp. Mill Bay became a more appealing place to live, and what had been small summer cottages became permanent residences. My wife, bless her soul, lived in a cottage by the water. I lived in a cabin on the hill, a harmonious relationship. Mill Bay is a thriving commuter town of about 3,200 people, regarded by many as a preferred lifestyle and place to bring up children. Mill Bay has a secondary school, a shopping centre, a renowned private school, and numerous community organisations. Thanks to the Malahat Highway, which is still constantly under construction due to the heavy traffic, locals wishing dinner or entertainment in Victoria can make the trip in under 40 minutes. It's a different story now, but in 2014 I see construction is still not completed. Well, my friends, the original road you'll be telling me across the pages of time was crudely constructed by today's standards. There was but a single lane in many places and a gravel covering. And here we are, still not finished. You might know that I mapped this road out in 1903. So tell me, why is it that you people haven't finished it yet?
Well, that's kind of the nature of roads and highways. I mean, technically they can almost never be done. I mean, a lot's changed around the province in the last 100 years. You know, when you were driving the highway initially, you know, you might see a dozen vehicles out here. Now we're over 20,000 vehicles a day on average. So as the populations grow and as the economies grow, there's a requirement to keep upgrading and improving the safety of our highway infrastructure, not only on the island here, but across the whole province. So it's a never-ending battle, if you will. We got to keep improving as it's warranted. And we're going to be adding a 1 kilometer southbound passing lane so motorists can more efficiently get through the Malahat. Once this particular project here is completed, over 50% of the Malahat will be median divided with concrete median barrier.
Well, thanks, Darren. Our road is looking wonderful. Now, if those idiots over there who are trying to kill themselves would take a little more care and drive a little more slowly, my road would have been completed long ago. A warning for driving too slow. Too slow! Can you believe it? Times have changed all right. So now, thanks for your patience. I've told you my story. A kind thought, if you please, as you drive up and down my road, a path I've walked on many summer's days with my compass in my survey equipment, just so you could enjoy it as you have today. May good luck be your friend in whatever you do, and may troubles be always a stranger to you. May your days be many, and your troubles be few. Goodbye, and Slán go fóill.
He was very stubborn, and once he had decided that he was going to do something, once he decided that he wanted something, really nothing was going to stand in the way. Not political opposition, not popular opposition, not even family opposition. He did what he wanted and when he wanted and how he wanted. He ate oatmeal every day. His theory was that anything that was good for his horse was good for him. Rolled oats he fed his horse, and so he ate the same food as his horse. Drank a bottle of Irish whiskey every day of his life, he claimed, and there's certainly some evidence that that's true. He produced so many empty bottles of Burke's Irish whiskey that he turned the bottles upside down and he used them to line the edge of his driveway. And the driveway, which was a couple of 100 feet long, had a continuous line of bottles planted in the ground here in Mill Bay, all the way down to the road. That was certainly a mark of just how much he consumed personally. He was a rogue, a rascal, a rebel, but he certainly was larger than life, and I'm very proud to be his descendant. I feel that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that some of what his characteristics were have rubbed off on me, and I'm absolutely thrilled that we can make this story more known to the public.